All right, good afternoon and welcome back. I know we're a bit of a smaller group today since it's Friday. We've got some people traveling and all of that. But thank you for those of us who are here on Zoom. Also, folks that were able to come face to face for today. Thanks for doing that. So welcome. We've got a few things to go over and then we'll get into some of the new stuff for today. Hopefully get out a little bit earlier since it's Friday. So I just have a couple housekeeping updates for you. I apologize for the Canvas issues in getting your feedback up on your reflections, but you should now see your feedback available if you haven't already done so. In order to access that, you should just go to the assignment submission on Canvas. It should have the paragraph with your comment on it. You can also access it. You probably received an email where it should show up too. And again, that's also in addition to your grade, which is out of 150 points. So that stuff should be up. Let me know if you have any questions about the grade that you received in the assignment. And I definitely recommend giving it a look and double checking your grade on that and the feedback you got to help you as you're working on and preparing for your small group assessment assignment. So I just wanted to go over a couple things that I noticed again to help you with thinking about and preparing. One of them is, again, I think, while there's really good content, and I think you all had some really good engagement in the course, a few things to work on. First of all would be with formatting and structure, right? Make sure that you're using 12 point. Try to avoid sort of drawing something out with like headings and spacings to try to squeeze it into the 2 pages. I'd much rather have you go under the page minimum than to try to artificially stretch it out into 2 pages, because I've done that too, I know. And I can see it when it's happening, but just to add additional comments or details or citations to help if you're finding that you're not able to reach the 2 pages. Also, make sure to capitalize for proper nouns and just work on some of those small punctuation things like Zoom or Snapchat, right, would be the names of apps or programs. So you'd want to capitalize those. And also make sure to use things like commas. When you say, for instance, I went to the store, you use a comma after for instance to separate out some of those ideas. And then keep working on breaking up some of those really long paragraphs. If it's over around half a page or so, it's a good idea to break up that into another paragraph. Again, just some general observations that I noticed on what came up in the reflections. I think overall, people did a solid job on that. I know that you're working on the small group assessment to turn it in by this Sunday. So given that, I wanted to give you a little bit of a break and push the quiz to next week. So rather than having any sort of quiz for this week, you instead are going to have a quiz that'll cover some of the things from this week as well as next week that you won't need to turn in until week 7. So just wanted to give you that update. And additionally, one other housekeeping note that I wanted to give was with regard to scheduling. You probably noticed if you were looking through the schedule grid on Canvas that while we are meeting on the 14th, the following Monday on the 21st, we are not going to have any in-class or Zoom meeting. On Monday the 21st, I'm going to be at a conference just presenting some research and doing some work there. So I will not be able to be in town for that Monday's meeting, but I'll have a short prompt for you to complete on Canvas. Should take the amount of time of class, hopefully even a little less for you. That'll just go over some of the ideas and we pick up on the 23rd. So again, we'll be meeting next Monday, but the following Monday on the 21st is just marked in the schedule as a date where we'll do stuff remotely instead. So just to have that stuff on your radar. So what I want you to do now is as part of your attendance today, take some time to write or type on your own. First of all, where are you at with your small group assessment? Have you started it? Are you halfway done? Have you sent out a rough draft? What do you still need to do or still need to complete at this stage? And lastly, do you have questions about this assignment that I could address in class? So that goes for folks either on Zoom or face-to-face. Zoom folks, if you have questions about the assignment, you can also use the chat and I can answer questions in the chat about this. Yeah, what's up?
I do have one question. So are we talking about one task we did with a small group or multiple tasks we did?
Yeah, so you can use examples from multiple ones. If you only have one to draw from, or you really strongly want to focus on one the whole time, you can, but you can draw from kind of a wealth of examples from different groups about how you participated. You could even use kind of a compare and contrast style, if that's useful to you as well. I was this role and more of a team leader in this group, was more of a plant in this group. I'll give you another minute or two to finish your current thought or idea here. So folks here face to face or on Zoom, are there any other questions that I can answer for you about this assignment? And I will be available if you want to send out a rough draft by the end of the day today. I can do that and give you feedback, or if you have any last minute questions or issues that have come up. Also, remember that if you have not yet used your get out of jail free card, you can use it for this essay and then wait and have it turned in, not this Sunday, but the following Sunday with no penalty. So that option is available to you. I also wanted to take a moment to talk about the anonymous feedback. So it's still a little in progress. If you haven't already done so, please turn it in by the end of the day today. It's available on the front page of Canvas. One of your major links is an anonymous feedback form where you just let me know how the class is going, what I can do to help you out. In what I've looked through so far, seems like things that people have been enjoying in the class are using, these examples, applications, situations. The overall pace seems to be kind of on track, not too fast or too slow as we're going through material, and using things like the quizzes and review to go over material seems to be working well. So I wanted to mention a few pieces of feedback. There was one piece of feedback that was mentioning that at times it feels like there's a lot of focus on reiteration or recapping previous things. So one thing I'm doing is I'm going to be cutting down some of the review. I'll still do a quick review of things from last class, but I'll try to spend a little bit more time going over new content and ideas related to the course to expand out some of that. And again, slides from previous classes, you're welcome to review for days that you've missed. We'll keep working on some additional group work opportunities. Some people brought up, that things like makeup assignments, there was a concern that that meant that folks weren't engaging and participating, but that is an option, if you're not able to make class, if you're having things that come up, if you're feeling sick, and since it is kind of a page or a page and a half, it does add up to being kind of a similar amount of content to attending face-to-face. So I like to do it as kind of an accessible way to participate. And people mentioned the option of having things like short essay styles for quizzes or something similar. So I am going to kind of play with the format of quizzes and offer a little bit more flexibility there going into the later quizzes in the class. So if there are issues related to the course, things that I can do to make your experience a more positive one, please let me know. And again, I look forward to looking through the remaining feedback for those of you that still need to get that in today. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I just wanted to go over some of the modifications I've made with that. As we talked about, small group assessment is due on Sunday. Use that rubric and guidelines available on Canvas to help you out. As a quick recap of last class, we talked a little bit about how to facilitate meetings and have members of small groups work really well. Remember, a lot of the traits of bad meetings are things such as people kind of getting angry at each other for no reason, not really focusing on the topic at hand, people kind of arguing over facts, But good ways to host a meeting include being early, showing really good time, good attention to detail, using things like really tracking and following the meeting. We talked last class about how there's these three parts, right? Preparing for the meeting is 1/3, where you're really trying to make sure that you send out an agenda, send out a link, provide the information that people need going into the meeting, ensure the physical or digital space is working correctly. Running the meeting effectively involves doing things such as, regular communication, managing and staying on task, dealing with distractions that might come up, and so on. And then the idea at the end of meeting follow-up being creating a space for people to openly share what happened in the meeting, sending things like minutes, using things like email to indicate the follow-ups or issues that need to be talked about or dealt with in the meeting. So all taken together are important parts of facilitating a good meeting. So that's the recap. Again, I wanted to keep it pretty brief. This class will talk about Robert's Rules of Order, otherwise known as parliamentary procedure. So while it might seem a little boring, it's actually a really commonly used, interesting way of working on group meetings and structure that help us to understand how to host and do meetings effectively. And then we'll be able to talk about how we're applying and using these types of skills, including in a group scenario for the class. I'm curious, has anybody ever been in a group or heard of this idea of parliamentary procedure or Robert's Rules of Order? Something you've heard of before? How about folks on Zoom? Is there anybody that has heard of or done this before?
Personally, I have not.
Okay.
So I have not.
Okay. Yeah, so it sounds like this is new to most people, but that's okay. This is definitely something we'll have the chance to talk about a little bit more for today. So Robert's Rules of Order is really kind of interesting in its background. It actually comes from this fellow here, Henry Martin Roberts, who was a soldier in the Civil War. So Henry was a soldier on behalf of the Union, fought for DC and a lot of the New England states at the time. Also an engineer. He's got a really kind of eclectic background, but he was somebody that was really coming kind of as this very military man perspective, very interested in structure, in order, in clarity, and back in the 1800s, you might think back and there was a lack of organization and structure happening. So Robert's Rules of Order was developed by Henry Martin Robert as a way to establish good rules and guidelines surrounding the ways that members of groups participated, engaged, and worked with each other. So while it's quite old, right, well over 100 years old, the Robert's Rules of Order are so popular and so commonly used that actually 80% of formal organizations in the United States that hold some type of meeting actually use Robert's Rules of Order. So for instance, a lot of nonprofits or large corporations or businesses will use Robert's Rules. Organizations, including those on campus, like ASEOU, use a form of Robert's Rules of Order. So there's a lot, and also a lot of state legislatures that use them as well. So it's everywhere. And so if you don't have experience with it now, there's a good chance you're going to be a part of an organization or observe an organization that uses this format. It's also a good format for you to use if you find yourself in a group, because it really helps us to make our meetings run smoothly. So it's a really commonly used, very applicable to the real world style of formal organization. And it's popular for a lot of different reasons. One of them being that it's airtight. In fact, Henry Robert actually had a phrase about this, that 80% of the book, 80% of the rules or guidelines about this format are used 20% of the time. That is, he wrote a lot of contingencies and plans for how members of a group would act in the face of some type of problem or issue that came up. So most of the time, you don't need to know all the nitty gritty and all the details, but some of the stuff in there is really useful for people that are in kind of a tough spot. It also helps us to understand and facilitate multiple opinions and perspectives on different issues. So if you think back to, if you've ever read in like political science or civics class, Federalist 10 from James Madison, right? It's the idea that there's this concern for how minorities outside of a majority opinion on an issue can participate and be involved in the process. And so one thing that makes Robert's Rules of Order unique and really effective is that it allows people that are not the majority perspective to still be heard and to still express their concerns about an issue. And that's really important because yes, you can arrive at a majority decision, but there isn't a free way for everybody to feel heard if all you're doing is a majority vote, and that can lead to inefficiencies, problems, and conflict that emerges later as the group continues. So parliamentary procedure, right, otherwise known as Robert's Rules, is a way that organizations and groups are structured. So this is the idea that the organization has this system or structure behind it that fulfills a lot of different functions. One of them is consistency, that when you go in a meeting, you know that it's going to be structured and organized and developed in the same way every time you get, right? That you know the next time you go in, that if there's an agenda or action item, it's going to be tackled and voted on and dealt with the exact same way. It's fair, right? Fairness is important because when your group is working together and trying to deal with an issue or move ahead or to vote on something, it needs to feel like there isn't bias or the opportunity for things to be totally shut down. And it's efficient. We've talked about how oftentimes when people participate in groups, it can feel like you're just kind of going through the motions and meandering and getting off topic. So it helps meetings go more efficiently. There's a lot of questions and topics that this type of format can answer. Again, there's a lot of detail and specificity to Robert's Rules that are well outside the bounds of this class, but some of the things are who gets to speak for how long, if a discussion rambles or goes off topic, making decisions, how do we reach and arrive at a decision? What's the requirement there, like a majority or 2/3 or consensus type vote? How we make decisions, as mentioned before, is important. If we can't commit or resolve an issue now, how do we move on or table a discussion for later? What do we do if we change our minds and we reach a different opinion on an issue than where we start? Those are a lot of issues that come up over the course of the meeting. And Robert's Rules is great because it has a solution or answer to each one of those things. So there's some key concepts and ideas that help us to sort of understand and make sense of how these types of meetings play out. So I want to go over a little bit about those to help us understand and sort of map out how this meeting could work. One of the key ideas here is the idea of a quorum. So a quorum is a group of people that have to be present in order for the group to have a formal meeting and be able to make decisions. I'll give you an example why this is important. So there have been multiple states that over the years have been dealing with very politically heated or controversial legislation. For instance, over the past several years in Wisconsin, there have been concerns surrounding collective bargaining and rights to unionize. In states such as Texas, there have been concerns surrounding policies, including abortion. In even states such as Oregon, right, there have been concerns surrounding COVID-19, energy and taxation policy, and so on. When there is oftentimes really heated or controversial legislation, and you have a significant body or political party or group of people that oppose that legislation, there are some situations where state senators or representatives will flee the state and go into hiding. The reason that they do that and that they flee the state and are like hiding in some random place in a totally different state for a while is because if they are not physically present or able to attend, they can't show up and the legislative session can't happen. That is, they cannot actually hold a vote on a bill that they strongly oppose because they're not physically there and they're unable to form a quorum. They are unable to form enough people in attendance to actually hold a formal meeting. So say you have like 12 state senators and like 5 or 6 of them have fled the state and can't attend, then they can't hold a quorum, they can't vote. So quorum is important because you have to have enough people to actually make a decision. There's another way of thinking about it. Say you're in a group of people and you're trying to move forward on something, but you know that there's a good amount of people that oppose and dislike what your plan is. If people who oppose are suddenly sick one day, you don't get to suddenly say, haha, they're gone, I'm gonna muscle it through now, right? So a quorum is designed to protect and make sure there's enough people there that when it's voted on, that it really can accurately represent people. Oftentimes it's something like 2/3, other times it's a simple majority. When it comes to the tasks and the formal structure that groups will do for meetings, they'll do it in a few different ways. Oftentimes, groups will start by reading and approving minutes. So we talked about the importance of minutes before, but the idea is that minutes are notes and observations related to that previous meeting. Right? That notes taken in the previous meeting can be discussed. It's a great way to recap the previous meeting and just to make sure that everybody agrees as to what happened. We've also talked this week about how things like quick wins, easy things that can be approved fairly quickly are good options, right? So it's a quick win. Those previous tasks can be resolved, dealt with, wrapped up in a neat little bow, and the group can move on. Reports. So there's a good chance that when you're part of a group or organization, that your group members are parts of other groups and organizations. For instance, you might be a member of ASEOU or like a senator or something like that, but you're also involved in another group, like a planning activity, or maybe you're involved with like new student orientation or something like that. So if you're part of another relevant group, or maybe a smaller group within the larger one meeting, you get to report on and share as a member of that group what went on. So maybe you're a part of a radio group, you're putting together a radio production. And you choose to share, hey, we were at this conference last week. Here's what happened at this radio conference. That would be a report. Unfinished business reports refers to the things that your group couldn't get to in the previous meeting. Maybe you ran out of time, maybe you couldn't reach a solution, whatever the heck the reason was, that is what's on the agenda next. And then the new business or the new items that come up for your group would be things that you bring up at the end. So that's the new stuff that gets added to the agenda, or depending on how fancy you want to be, gets put on the docket. A motion is a formal oral proposal. You'll notice that like most of the time with parliamentary procedure, you are verbally saying something to really indicate that issue. So I motion that we approve last week's minutes. A second is a requirement for a motion to go forward. So in other words, a second means that there's another person that provides support for that motion. I motion that we approve the minutes. Second means that another person is adding in their support. What this means, right, is that if somebody is doing a motion and it has no support, nobody else wants to do it, it doesn't happen. So it makes things more efficient, it saves people time, and ensures that there is at least some level of support for what somebody's doing. Stating the question, what this means is that when a motion is seconded, right, brought forward, that there is an opportunity to debate or discuss that issue. I motion that we approve the minutes. Second, and then you open things up for discussion or debate. Hey, these minutes look good. However, I was present at this meeting and I'm not listed in the minutes. You might bring that in as a concern. The pending question would be the one that's currently under debate or discussion. And then after that, typically once discussion has ended, or if there's no debate, seeing as there's no debate, a vote would typically be held. All those in favor say aye. People would say aye. All opposed would say nay. And then there would also be abstentions for people that would choose not to vote one way or another. Maybe they're unsure, or maybe they feel like they don't have a specific reason to vote one way or the other. So depending on the way that your group is structured in its membership, could be a simple majority, could be 2/3, or it might be unanimous. So that's sort of the nuts and bolts of how this procedure would work. Again, you'd have a quorum, you'd work through tasks, you'd have a motion, you'd have support, you'd state the question and have a level of discussion or debate on the issue, and then you'd move to a vote on that action. I wanted to share a short video that helps us to see parliamentary procedure in action and helps us to better visualize it. So I'll be asking you in just a little bit to kind of act out and use this procedure on your own as well. This will be a useful way for you to kind of look through and better understand that process. So a lot of other ways that groups might structure or organize themselves can be kind of clunky by comparison. Right, so Robert's rules lets us prepare and think about. We're recognized by the chair or person when we want to speak or bring something to the table. Depending on how formal it is, you might provide an introduction to who you are and your background. I move, right? You bring a motion, it's a second, it's debated, and then it would move to a vote. There's a motion. Is there a second? Yes, there is a second. Great. So discussion, again, would be a chance to debate or address the issue. Seeing none, go to a vote. Then you would move to the next agenda item on the list. So a point of order gets raised if your group is not following the rules or not doing something that they're supposed to. You explain how something went out of order. So in this case, right, the issue or topic being brought up is not the next item on the agenda, it's the wrong one. Can't move out of order, right? A few other things. A point of information is seeking clarity on an issue. There's other things you can do, such as doing an amendment where you add to or modify an agenda item as well. For instance, if your name is not included in the minutes, you could amend the minutes to add your name. So that's a quick and dirty explanation of how kind of the basics of Robert's rules work. So the last thing that I want to mention before we move into a scenario that asks you to kind of use and act out this on your own is, again, minutes are important. One model of minutes that you could use is to share the location, date, time, and list out who was there in the meeting. You can also list out the agenda items, and then after that, list out the way that they're debated. There's a lot of different formats you can use for tracking minutes. You could even do it in a less structured way where you just sequentially bring out issues or topics that people have discussed over the course of the meeting. Task somebody who takes good minutes, who pays attention and follows the discussion. If they drift away, fall asleep, or are on their phone, there's a good chance they're not a good candidate for minutes. You can also have people rotate or change roles in terms of who's taking minutes. Make sure when you're tracking minutes to indicate who's speaking and on what topic. Again, it's a good idea to avoid a he said, she said situation. You want to be as clear as possible about who's saying what. That way you have a paper trail for later. Paper trail being that there is stable text that shows what happened when, especially as you deal with potential conflict or disagreement later. Track people who came. It's really good to figure out in case there's people that don't regularly show up to meetings, who you can follow up with, and just to make sure who's pulling their weight and doing work. Tracking the votes and the level of support for things is important. And saving, archiving, and really dating the minutes too is important. Rather than a personal email or computer, save them to a drive, send them out to everybody. Make sure that there is stable access. Again, minutes are the thing that makes sure that you're doing your due diligence and that your group is able to have what it needs longer term. So what I want to do next is do a scenario where I'm going to ask you to kind of act out and apply Robert's rules as we've discussed it. So congratulations, you and your members of the group are parts of ASEOU. And in a meeting, your group members are to pass a motion that will give all EOU students free chocolate for Valentine's Day. Hooray. You are EOU's Valentine. What I want your group members to do is to take some time to gain a good understanding of Robert's rules, including anything that is a little unclear you might have missed from the process, and make sure that everybody in your group understands and knows how to participate. And then once your group time ends and you finish working together in your group, I'm going to ask each group to demonstrate or act out for us how they would use Robert's rules to approve this motion to give EOU students free chocolates. So take some time to prepare and discuss how you would act out this. So we'll have the 4 folks who are here face-to-face in a group, and then we'll have 2 Zoom groups. I'll create 2 different breakout rooms of 4 and 5 for the rest of the folks to meet and discuss, and again, to act out, to share verbally how they would use Robert's rules to get this motion approved. So I'll create 2 breakout rooms. And yeah, take some time to discuss this and we'll come back together.
You like create the rules, fight the roles.
Yeah, so I would try to assign or figure out who's going to take the role, like who's going to be the chair or person that puts it out there, who's going to be the person that seconds. So take some time to figure out the rules that you would need to have people occupy.
I don't want. I'll second. Not a good word, unless someone disagrees, so I disagree. Mainly, okay, if we should wait for another day, that way we get the 50% chocolate discount or something. Like, you wait just a little bit. So you got the, but hey, regardless. At home chocolate. At home chocolate. Discussion.
Okay, let's practice.
So once I say second, you would come in saying, does anybody?
Oh, it's me?
It's open to discussion now.
Chair.
That's already proposed.
Okay, don't you start and then.
Yeah, so the chair will start. They'll motion saying, oh, this is the topic. Who would say yes the first time? I would say.
I would like to make a motion to give all EU students free chocolate for Valentine's Day. Someone else?
Yes.
Sweet.
And then I'm the second, so you would come in saying like, oh, yes, I would approve this motion. I would come in saying second, yes, I approve this, and then it's open for discussion.
And then like, once we get it, be like majority rules. Basically for that. You just feel, all right, put to vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
I also.
Sure. All right.
I'll give Zoom folks just another minute or two.
What do you all propose we do for Valentine's Day?
Oh, wait, I can't, I'm not.
Oh. Wait, do I have this? I'm getting,
What's up?
wait, so what would you say?
So I wouldn't state chocolate for Valentine's Day.
Yes. It's on, if we're going to organize this, it would be on the agenda
Yes.
as like a plan, and then you would bring it up. And I'm not saying it to a vote, but saying like, does anybody support this idea? You'll come in saying like, yes, I second motion to pass this. And the person will come in saying second, I would agree to motion this, then it opens up for discussion.
Okay, I think I got it.
Awesome.
First on the agenda is giving free chocolate out for Valentine's Day. Who opposes or objects?
I would like to make a motion to give all EU students free chocolate for Valentine's Day.
I would like to second that motion.
Let's put it to a vote. All who agree, say aye.
Aye.
Majority rules, we're giving free chocolate out.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems like you all are very on top of it here. I'm gonna have the rest of the folks join us, and I'll have you all start us off. Set a good example for everybody on how to use that format. The motion failed in my other class. One of the groups just decided that they were going to vote it down because EOU didn't have the money. And they were like, well, if we do this, is our tuition? Yeah. Is our tuition going to go up if we get free chocolate? In which case it's not free. All right, so our face-to-face group has been practicing a little bit over here. So why don't you all start us off and show us this process in action?
The first proposal, should we give our free chocolate out for Valentine's Day?
I would like to make a motion to give all EU students free chocolate for Valentine's Day.
I would like to second this motion.
Let's put it to a vote. All that agree, say aye.
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 Majority rules, we're giving out free chocolate.
Awesome, that's good. The one thing that I would add, right, is just make sure when a motion gets seconded, that you open that up for discussion, right? Just to make sure that people have the chance to debate and talk about that, but that otherwise sounds really good. So let's hear from the first breakout room, which has Brooke, Caleb, JB, Josie, and Olivia. Can one of you start us off and share that process?
So like just do what they did or just like explain?
Yeah, act it out, right?
Okay. I move to pass the motion to give all EOU students free chocolate for Valentine's Day.
I second that motion. Oh, shit.
Happens all the time in Zoom meetings. It's awesome. Okay, so it's been seconded.
I'm gonna be honest, I forgot what was next.
Okay, so next up is discussion. So you would allow for discussion or debate about this motion.
Is
Seeing
there,
as there is no discussion, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
I,
All opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. And then let's hear from the other Zoom group. So Devin, Isabel, Kenna, and I believe somebody who's on their phone.
Alrighty, so I would like to put forward the motion of giving UU students free chocolate on February 14th for Valentine's Day.
I second that.
Does anyone have anything against this motion?
No, okay, I'll put it to a vote then. All in favors, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Alrighty, big dub. Okay, so let it be known that we will be getting free chocolate.
Great.
Majority rules. Cool.
Great. Good example of going through that process, right? And it's like one of those things where the more you do it, the more you kind of get it down and get that structure. So there's a good chance, remember later in the quarter, I'm asking you to observe a group that you're not a part of that does a meeting. There's a good chance a group that you observe might be doing a meeting in this format. So I think it can be a little bit weird and you see people saying second, talking about motion and all of that, and it can be a little bit hard to understand what's going on. So I think understanding sort of the steps here and how people do this format is just a useful way to figure out what the heck is going on a little bit better. So thanks for taking the time to kind of do this little activity and see these different steps in action. So as mentioned, it's Friday. So I want to take some time just to quickly wrap things up. So we talked a little bit today about Robert's Rules of Order, how it can be used to help us with structuring, organizing, and formatting our meetings, using it to keep track of minutes, really to keep things focused on the major action items and issues that come up, and then using things like rules and structure and organization to really help those meetings run smoothly and effectively. So again, you might not be using these rules now in your groups, but there's a good chance you'll run into a group that does, or you'll run into a situation in which using this format or using parts of this format could be useful for you. So next week, we'll be getting into group leadership. What does it mean to be a good leader? How can we use leadership? And how can we apply leadership skills to our participation in groups? So look forward to that. Have a great weekend. Please email or pass forward your attendance for today if you haven't done so already. Best of luck with wrapping up your small group assessment. Again, contact me if you need additional help on this assignment, and look forward to seeing you again on Monday.
Have you played Mafia or like Werewolf? Yeah.
Yeah.